Episode number 301, The Death of the High Blood Elder. An hour had passed, and the battle over the Blood Sea continued to escalate with increasing power. The clash between the powerhouses of the Integrationist path and the Purist path was intensifying. A clear victor was already emerging in the battlefield between Wave Kings, thanks to the arrival of a 16-year-old man. While Kane's power wasn't overwhelming enough to instantly reverse the tide on his own, his assistance played a pivotal role. His help allowed Kale to take down a middle-wave King Essence cultivator from the Purist path, contributing to the shift in the battle dynamics. It was a chain reaction, with Kale free to help more of his comrades, and with every minute, the advantage of the Integrationist path increased. Presently, more than 9 Wave Kings from the Purist path had fallen, while only 2 from the Integrationist path had suffered the same fate. Kane was kept informed of the battlefield state through Apex's guidance, but he couldn't afford to lose focus. The flow, though a powerful tool for predicting opponents' movements, wasn't foolproof. While he could predict Jason's actions, it didn't guarantee he could always evade them. Unlike Zima, whose attacks were somewhat crude and patented, Jason executed an almost flawless blood flow fury, even in his current state. However, as the battle carried on, Kane's use of the flow and his ability to face the Wave King increased, allowing him to get closer and closer to an opening, and when it finally happened, he did not waste it. Kane managed to break through Jason's guard, landing an elbow strike to the man's elbow. This spot was the same area where Kale had previously landed a flaming downward kick.
Crack.
The sound of breaking bones reached Kane's ears, but he was forced to retreat as a powerful blow targeted his head. Just as Kane moved back, a powerful kick flashed toward his chest. He anticipated the pattern, twisted his body, and raised his guard to fend off the attack. However, he was still sent hurtling through the air. Clenching his teeth, Kane regained control over his body and swiftly returned to the battle. He fought valiantly, using his utmost strength, but things were taking a dire turn for him. His energy pool was running low since even if his body and techniques could equal a Wave King, his astral wave and blood energy could not. If it weren't for Kane's ego wave taking control of the life wave in the air and the help of the gluttony module, constantly recharging his energy and vitality, he would have run out of stamina a long time ago. Then, a scream of pain pierced the air, and the skies turned red as blood began to rain down. Powerhouses from both sides stopped their fights for a second as they looked up and saw how clouds of blood began to fill the sky before they rained down. It was a majestic and gory phenomenon to see blood raining for hundreds of kilometers, tainting Blood Island and Blood City. The silence that followed was heavy as everyone recognized the source of the shout and the implication of blood raining upon the Blood Sea. The second Blood Elder had fallen.
Boom.
Less than 2 seconds after the rain of blood, an explosion covered the sky, one so strong that it made the ears of even Wave Kings bleed. Not long after, a figure crashed into the Blood Sea, creating a towering pillar of blood water that splashed in all directions, only for 2 figures to appear above the Wave Kings the next second. Powerhouses from both sides froze, recognizing the newcomers as the Blood Duke and Bloodless One. Even Kane and Jason couldn't disregard these figures, as they were far beyond their power levels. Their auras immediately stopped all other fights, since their appearance made it clear that there was no longer a need to carry on with the fight. A winner had emerged. Bloodless One's left side of the face was gone, and a fist-sized hole marred his stomach. Despite this, he smiled triumphantly, having succeeded in taking the second Blood Elder's life. The Blood Duke had lost his right leg and bore claw marks all over his body, with the deepest wound revealing his spine. The battle had been brutal, but his aura still radiated strength as he surveyed the waters. A figure then rose from the sea in silence. The High Blood Elder's body was battered but not fatally wounded. He lacked arms and bore a deep indentation where his evolution core had been. His cold gaze fixed on Kane, who clenched his fists in response. The High Blood Elder's eyes held menace, but Kane's resolve remained firm. He didn't fear death, especially when he stood on the victorious side of the war. The High Blood Elder didn't linger on Kane for long, turning his attention to the Blood Duke and sighing.
I am willing to leave with my people.
This declaration incited a burning rage within the Blood Duke.
Do you think I will simply let you go?
The High Blood Elder felt the burning killing intent on the Blood Duke, but there was no fear in his eyes. Even with all his wounds and the dire state of his sacred organ, there was still an immense amount of power inside him.
You too have the power to take my life, but I assure you it will come with a dire price. I will use all I have and fight until the last second. My body will not be a war trophy.
Dread appeared in the eyes of all the powerhouses from both sides when they heard that. The High Blood Elder hinted at the change of self-destruction before death, and if all the energy in his body were to erupt at the same time, it would take down a big piece of the Blood Sea with him. Facing the High Blood Elder's steadfastness, Cain saw an exchange of glances between the Blood Duke and Bloodless One. The ongoing war exposed their vulnerabilities and weakened their forces significantly. The deaths of several Wave Kings and the second Blood Elder left them vulnerable to external threats. The Blood Duke was confident in his ability to end the High Blood Elder's life, yet he understood that doing so would result in severe injuries. This, in turn, would weaken his ability to fend off challengers seeking to exploit the Blood Sea's vulnerability. Although Cain also desired to end the High Blood Elder's life, he refrained from issuing opinions to others. Lacking the power to kill the man, he had no right to speak. The Blood Duke motioned, ordering the Integrationist Path's Wave King to withdraw, creating a separation between the two sides. Just as he was about to give a command, his eyes widened, mirrored by Bloodless One's. Both of them were the first to perceive it, and soon everyone else saw it.
Zima.
Cain involuntarily cried out at the sight of the phantom-like figure resembling Zima, albeit much older. The High Blood Elder felt it, but before he could do something, his eyes trembled as all his defenses collapsed. In the next moment, Zima's phantom figure merged with him. A scream of agony echoed, but it was brief, replaced by a surge of power even greater than before. The High Blood Elder turned towards the crowd and then directed his focus onto Cain.
You little bastard.
A wave of terror washed over Cain as he felt the High Blood Elder's malevolent gaze. These eyes were more menacing and feral than even the High Blood Elders. In the next second, the Blood Duke and Bloodless One positioned themselves in front of Cain. The Blood Duke and Bloodless One shielded Cain from the rage of the entity in control of the High Blood Elder. However, despite their strength, both adopted solemn expressions since the aura of the enemy was one that surpassed theirs. The High Blood Elder's fury was uncontainable. Whoever was in control did not care about the Blood Duke or Bloodless One's protection. His singular focus was on Cain.
All my plans, all my efforts for over 100 years, and you dared to ruin them. Little bastard, I will kill you.
A dark force field enveloped the High Blood Elder, causing the sky to darken as the world quivered. Even atoms struggled under the pressure of this overwhelming power. Cain's eyes widened as he observed the event. He had heard of the power of the Third Realm, yet the force he now witnessed exceeded it. It was evident that the man before him had reached the Fourth Realm of the Ego-Eternal Path of Power. On the Purest Path's side, confusion reigned. They lacked awareness of the person who had taken control of the High Blood Elder's body. Amid the tense atmosphere, a sound of spatial rupture echoed, and a shadowy figure materialized. The aura emanating from this figure was on par with the being that had seized control of the High Blood Elder.
Haha, good Shadow King, assist me in eradicating these pests.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 302, First Collapsing Lightning Pillar.
Haha, good Shadow King, assist me in eradicating these pests.
It was impossible to distinguish almost anything from the person that just appeared since a dense cloak of shadows covered his figure. However, his golden eyes were clear to everybody, and no one beneath the Second Realm could focus on them. Yet, many of the powerhouses of the Blood Sea immediately recognized him. A unique force controlled the underground of the Empire called the Organization, and the shot callers went by the name of Dark Kings. Of the 10 Dark Kings, there was one whose nature was secrecy, capable of infiltrating even the Emperor's royal palace. No one knew his name or appearance, but everybody called him Shadow King. The Blood Duke immediately took control over the Blood Pagoda, channeling all its energy into him and Bloodless One as soon as the Shadow King appeared. Just the entity that took control over the High Blood Elder's body would have been challenging, but now there were two of them. And even more important, the only one that could give a command to a Dark King would be another Dark King. Two Dark Kings from the organization. That would be enough to threaten an entire sector, much less a weakened organization like the Blood Sea. Despite the Duke facing the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and over 100 Wave Kings, there was not even a trace of fear or worry in their eyes. They were that confident in their powers. Kain clenched his fists as he pushed his willpower to the limit in order to control his emotion and suppress his fear. It was hard to say about the rest of the powerhouses, but his chances of surviving a battle would be small since one of the Dark Kings was so keen on taking his life. The Shadow King turned his eyes toward Kain and glanced at the young man for a moment before speaking.
Blood King, I did not come here to fight. You hire me to take you out in case of danger to your life, and that is what I am going to do.
Although the voice of the Shadow King was male, it constantly changed between different tones, making it impossible to distinguish anything from it.
HMPH, none of these rats could stop me if I wanted to leave. If you wish for the other half of your payment, help me kill that brat.
The Blood King, the one that possessed the High Blood Elder's body, shouted. His killing seemed to burn with the intensity of a volcano and would not rest until Kain was dead.
Are you sure you can escape without my help?
The Shadow King looked to the sky as he uttered those words. Everybody else followed his sight, and only then did they notice the middle-aged man floating in the sky. Shock appeared in the eyes of the powerhouses, and that included the Blood Duke and Bloodless One, since neither had noticed the man's presence before. The man was around 2 meters tall, with short black hair, blue eyes, and a muscular body. He wore regular clothes, but a strange dragon-like beast revolved around his chest, and a sword hilt emerged from its maws.
First collapsing lightning pillar.
The Blood King shouted as he saw that man. He had been so focused on Kain that he overlooked the immense threat in the sky. Before any of the presents could even blink, the first collapsing lightning pillar appeared before the Dark Kings and grabbed the sword hilt emerging from the dragon's mouth. The life wave in 100,000 meters was drained when the middle-aged man touched the sword, and all that power was unleashed as soon as he took the weapon out.
ZNN end.
First, it was a blinding light, and what followed it was a giant arc of blue sword light that split the Blood Sea for nearly 200 kilometers. Kain's eyes widened as he saw how the man managed to split billions of tons of water with one single attack. People like to compare the power of Titans with nuclear weapons, but the destructive power of that sword strike was something humanity of the old world could never achieve.
BOOMMMs.
Clashing sounds emerged from the Blood Sea as the water fell back. It took a moment for silence to return, but once it did, no one uttered a word as they looked at the man.
As expected, I still lack the power to stop the Shadow King from escaping.
The first collapsing lightning pillar uttered those words without much concern in his body before turning around. The Blood Duke and Bloodless One grew tense under the eyes of the man. Both of them had heard the feats of the first collapsing lightning pillar, but it was clear the man far exceeded the legend. Explore more adventures at Freeweb Novel.
The old man said you must return to the Imperial Lightning Fort once you finish here.
Of everybody present, the only one that drew the first collapsing lightning pillar's attention was a young man, and as soon as he spoke those words, he vanished. Kain's eyes burned with red light as he stared at the sea and remembered the sword strike that managed to split it. The higher he rose, the more he learned, and now it was clear to him that even among Titans were those whose powers defied logic and could only be described as divine. The first collapsing lightning pillar and the Dark Kings fall in that category. The bad part was that one of them seemed very interested in taking his life, and he doubted they would just give up after failing once. The Blood Duke sighed as everything went way out of hand. Had it not been for the arrival of the first collapsing lightning pillar, who knew how many more people would have died before they could force the two Dark Kings away? However, his problems were far from over. The way the Blood King managed to take over the High Blood Elder was very strange, not to mention that the Dark King had hidden inside the Blood Sea for over 17 years under the disguise of Zima. Now he had to take care of the powerhouses of the purest path, and he could not simply exile them since there was no way to say for sure if one or more were under the influence of the Blood King.
All members of the Purest Path, you will be put under arrest until we figure out everything that happened and just how far the influence of the Blood King went.
When the powerhouses heard that, many of them frowned since the idea of being thrown into jail was not something they would accept gladly. The Blood Duke noticed the reluctance of the powerhouses, but his eyes grew cold. There was a great danger looming over the Blood Sea right now, and he would do everything in his power to keep it safe.
Anyone that resists will be considered a traitor and punished accordingly.
Fear appeared in the Wave Kings of the Purest Path when they saw the killing intent in Blood Duke and Bloodless One, and were sure that the Duke would not hesitate to attack with all their power if they were to resist the arrest or escape. In the end, despite their reluctance, all the powerhouses of the Purest Path shut down their energy defenses, allowing the Blood Duke to use the power of the Blood Pagoda to suppress their cultivation before being escorted out. Once that was taken care of, the Blood Duke commanded certain people to accompany him to the Blood Pagoda, where they would discuss the Dark Kings. As for the rest of the powerhouses of the Integrationists' path, they would remain on Blood Island and Blood City. The Blood Sea just went through a civil war, and while Kane's actions with the Blood Pagoda reduced casualties to a minimum, there was still resentment between both sides, so martial law was needed. Everybody had to remain in their homes, and the Wave Kings would be in charge of keeping order and ensuring there were no more deaths. Wave Champion, Wave Warriors, and normal people returned to their homes once they were free of the red plasma net. There was still killing intent in the eyes of many, but no one dared to fight with the Wave Kings watching from the sky. Blood kept reigning over Blood Island and Blood City since the death of the second Blood Elder unleashed energies that changed the atmosphere. It would be a long time before things returned to normal. People across the Empire stopped watching the Blood Sea, but that did not mean they would stop talking about it, since the arrival of two Dark Kings was something that shook the Empire. The civil war of the Blood Sea might have been shot, but people would talk about it for a very long time. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 303, Post-War Messuaires. While the situation on Blood City and Blood Island had quieted, peace was far from over. The Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and 9 of the Blood Sea's strongest and oldest powerhouses were in the Blood Pagoda's highest level. Those people's loyalty was unquestionable, and their voices and eyes could reach every corner of the Blood Sea. However, there was one more person among the group that the Blood Duke called into the meeting. Kane might be young, and his time in the Blood Sea was short, but no one in the room felt there was a problem with his presence. Not only had Kane's attack pushed the High Blood Elder into the sky and away from innocent people, but he also took control of the Blood Pagoda just at the right time, avoiding thousands of unnecessary deaths. Regarding his loyalty, even a complete idiot could see that he was not part of the Blood King's scheme, since there was nothing that man wanted more than to kill Kane. He was also a very important figure for the collapsing Lightning Duke and the Imperial Lightning fought since the mighty First Pillar acted as Kane's bodyguard. It was true that his current battle power was not much compared with the rest of the people in the room, but no one dared to look down on him for that. Kane's talent was so immense that it would only be a couple of decades before he caught up to them or even surpassed them.
It will be a very long time before we find out the true intentions of the Blood King and exactly when he managed to infiltrate the Blood Sea. If we go by his words, he had planned for 100 years already, so there is no doubt he is not over with us. Right now, we must decide what our approach will be for the powerhouses of the Purest Path. Does anyone have a good idea they would like to share with the group?
Silence reigned as the Blood Duke spoke those words. Everybody understood the dangers of keeping snakes in their ranks, but the decision was not so easy to make.
We are not in a position where we can allow weakness. The Blood Sea must act as a single unified force if we want to handle the looming threat.
Bloodless One was the first to speak, and his voice was eerily cold. There was a merciless light in his eyes, and everybody could understand his plan. Since they could not fully trust the powerhouses of the Purest Path, the only chance was to kill them all.
Killing all of them would mean a great loss to our war power and alienate the younger generation.
Countering Bloodless One's idea was none other than Raiden's grandmother. No one would accuse the woman of having a soft heart, since she alone killed two of the purest path's powerhouses during the Blood Sea's civil war. However, her way of acting during times of war and peace was very different, worthy of a general who knew how to adapt to the battlefield and diplomacy.
We can mitigate the loss in war power by using them as furnaces to give birth to new powerhouses or transform them into battle puppets. As for alienating the new generation, while it could happen, it would not generate problems for a long time.
Bloodless One immediately gave solutions to the old woman's concerns. Clearly, he was not just ruthless, but also a brilliant tactician. The Blood Duke and the other Blood Sea powerhouses began to consider Bloodless One's solution with care when they saw Cain raise his hand. Cain was not conceited or careless and knew that while he was allowed in the room, he did not have the same freedoms the others had earned through hundreds of years of service. The Blood Duke saw that Cain had something to say, and after making sure that no one in the room had a problem with the young man giving his opinion, he nodded.
Your plan will bring order, stability, and power to the Blood Sea. And it is true that you do not have to worry about the younger generation now, but what about in 100 years? Killing those powerhouses would do more than just alienate them. Learning about the death of their fathers and grandfathers at the hands of the Blood Sea's higher-ups will fill their hearts with rage that will fester, and the smart ones will hide it until they can do something about it. I understand the urgency of the situation, but there is always another path.
Bloodless One frowned when he heard Cain's words. He knew the young man was in the right, but there was nothing he could do about it. Allowing untrusted elements with the power of wave kings to roam around Blood Sea in a moment like this was not something they could permit. As for keeping them detained inside the Blood Pagoda, that was also not wise since they could always escape, and the damage they would do on their exit would be catastrophic.
You see the problem with Bloodless One's plan, but do you have a solution?
The Blood Duke was surprised by Cain's deep analysis and wanted to see if this one could guide them.
Before anything, we must learn about the Blood King, his plan, and if anyone else is under his influence before doing anything with the Wave Kings of the Purest Path. I understand that time is of the essence, and it would take a long time for you to gather accurate information and root out the spies, so I propose to contact a force specialized in that type of task.
Cain's words made sense. Hiring a specialized force would help since they could do things much faster than the Bloodless Force. While the Bloodless Force was strong, they were warriors, not spies, so gathering information was not their forte. However, they could not just hire anyone. First of all, they had to be able to trust the result of the investigation, and there was also the fact that not many forces would be willing to meddle with the Dark Kings. Cain knew all that, but he had the perfect choice in mind.
I suggest hiring the Egon family.
Many of the people present widened their eyes as they heard Cain's proposal. While it was true that the Egon family was known for its assassination skills, they were also great detectives. However, there were problems. Not anyone could hire them, and they were extremely expensive.
You have a deep connection with the Egon family, so you will act as the proxy.
Bloodless One knew about Cain's connection with the Egon family. After all, he would have to be blind not to recognize Void State.
Yes, I have a very good relationship with a member of the Egon family. He has the authority to negotiate in their name. As for the price, the wealth left behind by the High Blood Elder and Second Blood Elder would be more than enough.
Awkward expressions appeared in the powerhouses when they heard that. Many of them were already thinking of taking part of that wealth for them, but it seemed that it would not be the case. The Blood Duke and Bloodless One exchanged glances as they heard Cain's proposal. The Egon family did not fear the Dark Kings. With their skills and resources, they would have news quickly. Since Cain could act as their proxy, everything would go smoothly, so there was no reason to refuse. Cain saw the exchange between the Blood Duke and Bloodless One and smiled. He had promised Jonathan to establish a channel between the Egon family and Blood Sea, and if both parties could benefit, all the better. The Blood Duke looked around, and after seeing everybody nodding, turned toward Cain.
We accept your proposal. I hope you can contact the Egon family once this meeting is over, since the faster, the better.
Cain nodded, then went to the next point of his plan.
Once we are sure there are no spies, we need to find a way to fix the division between the people of the Blood Sea, and for that I have 2 words: cultural exchange.
Confusion appeared on the faces of the powerhouses when they heard that. They understood the term, but were curious about the way in which Cain wanted to apply it.
As Bloodless One said, to face the incoming threat, the Blood Sea must act as a singular force, and it is impossible to achieve that goal with people that are xenophobic to the bone.
Everybody nodded since they understood that the car of the animosity between both groups was the xenophobic behavior of the purest path, one that could only lead to the downfall of the Blood Sea.
There must be an exchange of ideas if we want them to break the prejudice. People of the Blood Sea must establish a sense of brotherhood with outsiders, and there is no better place for that than the military.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 304, You Will Never Have My Trust.
I propose to start with members of the younger generation. It is easier for them to learn and eliminate the xenophobic ideology implanted in their minds by their father and brothers.
Cain could see a mixture of emotions in the faces of the powerhouses, including Blood Duke and Bloodless One. They could see the gain in sending people of the purest path into the army. There was no better place to prove yourself and understand that the essence of a man was his character, and not the blood that ran through his veins than the flames of the battlefield. Not to mention, they would be fighting against the dark races, something all humans hated, making it easier to bond. However, it could also erode those youth's sense of belonging to the Blood Sea, generating problems in the long run.
Of course, you would not just send warriors to the Imperial Lightning Fort and expect nothing in return. I am sure the collapsing Lightning Duke would be happy to send young soldiers here. That would also help to combat xenophobia. You can establish a merit system to increase their standing and ranking in the Blood Sea, making their presence a win for everybody.
The frown on the powerhouses grew weaker as they heard that part of Cain's plan, since it indeed would be a win for everybody. They were not totally convinced, but the next part made everybody's eyes glow.
Besides, having a large number of soldiers in the Blood Sea would make anyone think twice about attacking you.
Your next read is at Freeweb Novel. A flash of shock crossed the eyes of the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and every other powerhouse in the room. It was clear that the Blood King did not fear the Blood Sea, but even the organization thought twice about attacking the Imperial Army. Taking soldiers from the army into their ranks would help people understand that outsiders were not all monsters, and give the Blood Sea a new shield without them losing their individuality.
That tactic will work in most of the youths. Some would retain their xenophobic nature regardless of everything, but their numbers, power, and influence will be so little that they would not be a problem now or in the future.
Cain's words made awe appear in the powerhouses. They wonder how someone so young would have such sharp insight regarding human nature. In all honesty, even Cain did not know it. Most likely, it was part of the experiences of his past life that lingered in his soul. Bloodless One was very pleased with Cain's plans, but one major problem remained.
Helping the majority of those youths see the stupidity of xenophobia is plausible, but what about the Wave Kings? They are older, and it would be harder for them to change their nature. We can allow a few dozen or even hundreds of Wave Warriors or Wave Champions with a xenophobic nature since they can be kept in line, but a single Wave King could provoke a lot of damage.
Cain nodded, and cold light appeared in his eyes as he exchanged glances with Bloodless One.
The battlefield is a very dangerous place. Everybody that goes in must be ready to die. Once it is proved they are not part of the Blood King's forces, you must send all the Wave Kings of the purest path into the Imperial Lightning Fort. They must immediately join the battlefield against the Dark Races as punishment for their indirect assistance to the Blood King's scheme. There, those that can change will return to the Blood Sea. The other will die. We can also ask the Egon family's help for that task. As long as it is done in silence, their families and friends will only blame the Dark Races.
Silence reigned in the room once the powerhouses heard Cain's plan for the Wave Kings. The youth had brilliant ideas when it came to helping people, but he truly shined when it was time to handle problems. Luckily, he was on their side since none of them wanted to be the target of his schemes. Chatta soon returned to the room as the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and the powerhouses began to discuss the fine details of Cain's plan. It was only after 2 more hours that everything was defined. Cain would be the proxy of the Egon family and would establish talks with the Imperial Lightning Fort, but from that point on, the one in charge would be Bloodless One. It was impossible for the young man to take that position since he could not talk in the name of the Blood Sea. Once everything was in order, Kane's eyes focused on the Blood Duke, and red light emerged in them, along with a brutal coldness.
Since the meeting is over, please let me speak with the Blood Duke in private.
Surprise appeared in the powerhouses when they saw Kane's eyes, and they turned toward the Blood Duke, waiting for this one to tell them what to do next.
Please leave us.
The Blood Duke's eyes grew sharp as he focused on Kane and indicated for everybody but Bloodless One to leave. Once they were alone, Kane's eyes grew colder. His gaze was not different from the one he would give an enemy.
You were the one that revealed our presence to the High Blood Elder, so they could hire an assassin and take care of us.
Kane's voice was full of certainty. He was not making a question but affirming a fact. The locations the Blood Maiden and Blood Champions would use to go through the 4 trials of purity were a secret, yet assassins were waiting for them in Icecrow. Only 2 people could have revealed that information, the Blood Duke and Bloodless One, but Kane knew the second was not responsible. Kane learned about Bloodless One's reaction to Martin and Raiden's deaths. There was rage in the man's eyes, but not guilt. Bloodless One's eyes grew sharp as he heard Kane's words but remained silent. The Blood Duke stared at Kane for a moment, and although he did not negate it, neither did he affirm the young man's words.
Why would I harm the people of my own path? My stance toward the purest path should be clear, and that my relation with the Blood King can only be one of pure animosity.
Kane's eyes remained cold as he stared at the Blood Duke.
You wanted a civil war, a way to get rid of the High Blood Elder and all those powerhouses from the purest path. While there was discomfort and rage in the integrationist path's wave kings, it did not reach the point where they would march into war. Yet, things would have taken a very different turn if the Blood Maiden or some of the Blood Champions had perished under the nefarious tactics of some assassins.
Kane noticed how the Blood Duke clenched his fists, but the young man did not stop.
1 or 2 deaths would have been enough. You never expected everybody to be in danger, so the Wave King assassin should have been a flaw in your plan.
The Blood Duke's eyes grew sharp as he was about to counter Kane's words when he felt Bloodless one cold gaze. He sighed and shook his head for a moment before speaking.
The Blood Sea could not endure this division for much longer, so I needed to do something. I knew danger was looming, so I made the hard choice, the life of 2 people for the safety of millions. It was not easy nor something I enjoyed, but I did it. Sacrifices are needed in war. Any good general understands that.
Kane stared at the Blood Duke for a moment before nodding. He could see the reasoning behind the man's plan, and shouting in anger was useless since he had no way of harming this one. He just wanted to ascertain the kind of man he was and also verify Bloodless One's participation.
I understand you, but from now on you will never have my trust.
The Blood Duke clenched his fists. Before the war, the trust of a Wave Champion would have meant nothing, but Kane was already intertwined with the fate of the Blood Sea. However, he could do nothing about it. His decision pushed things to this place.
Soon the ascendance of the Blood Moon will begin, and I will march into the Blood Sea's core. Before that, I would like a meeting with Jason Sampson, alone and without people watching us.
The Blood Duke and Bloodless One immediately understood what Kane was after. Kane had already learned the consequences of not taking care of his enemies and would not allow another Uriel to appear. Jason would never stop hating him. If that were the case, he would kill this one here and now.
I can visit Jason for you.
Bloodless One spoke. It was easy for him to decide between Kane and Jason. Kane immediately shook his head.
I want to visit him myself, without shackles on his body.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 305, Killing Jason. Bloodless One saw the killing intent in Kane's eyes, and a smile appeared. As the enforcer of law and order in the Blood Sea, he saw a lot of himself in the young man. Before the Blood Duke could say something about Kane's petition, Bloodless One nodded.
I can take you to Jason now if you are ready.
Kane's eyes grew sharp as he nodded. He and Bloodless One head to the teleportation formation and leave the room. The Blood Duke saw how all of that happened and sighed. Clearly, His tactics had not only alienated Cain, but also created a rift between him and Bloodless One. The prison containing the Wave Kings of the Purest Path was located in the lowest level of the Blood Pagoda and went by Blood Prison. Dozens of large blood metal cages could restrain Wave Kings in that level, and 2 peak Wave champions guarded each. 2 middle-aged men stood guard outside one of those cages. Both were hairless and had white skin, making their connection to the bloodless Foss clear. A sharp light appeared in their eyes when they saw 2 figures appear, but they immediately relaxed when they saw Bloodless One appear.
We welcome the bloodless leader.
The duo shouted in unison as they adopted a firm stance, looking forward without moving a muscle. Still, their eyes trembled for a moment when they saw the young man accompanying Bloodless One. God of the Blood Prison could not leave their post without the express order of Bloodless One, no matter the catastrophe happening outside, so the duo spent the entire civil war here. Yet that did not mean they did not know about the young man who won 10 battles in a row in the Blood Champion Final Tournament, sent the High Blood Elder flying away, and joined the battlefield full of Wave Kings. Bloodless One gave a short nod toward the duo before waving his hand and opening the cage. It was completely dark inside, but as the light reached in, everybody could see Jason with shackles around his arms. Jason was confused when he saw his door opening. He was full of fury and wanted to get out, but he was sure it would be a long time before they were let go. However, when he saw the figure of Cain and Bloodless One, his instincts began to scream.
What are you 2 doing here?
Neither Cain nor Bloodless One bothered to answer Jason's question, and they just looked at each other before the young man walked in. Bloodless One waved his hand again, making the shackles around Jason's body disappear before closing the gate.
Boom.
Less than 5 seconds after the cage was closed, Bloodless One and the 2 peak Wave champions began hearing an explosion from within.
Boom. 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 Boom.
They became faster and louder, and even indentation began to appear in the cage due to the powerful blast inside it. Only battles between Wave Kings using every ounce of power inside them could unleash such destructive might. Enjoy more content from Freeweb Novel. A Wave King could unleash as much destructive power as a small nuclear weapon. One could imagine the havoc of all that power in a cage smaller than a house. It took over half an hour for the noises inside the cage to quiet down, and then Bloodless One and the 2 Wave champions heard a soft tap in the gate. Bloodless One smiled as he opened the gate, showing Cain's bloody figure. The young man had bruises all over his body, and it seemed his left arm and shoulder were broken to the point that it no longer worked. Cain did not say anything and only nodded to the 2 peak Wave champions before leaving the place.
Clean the cage and then ask Bloodless 5 for new jobs.
Bloodless One commanded the duo before leaving as well. The peak Wave champion remained firm until Bloodless One finally left, and only then did they look into the cage, and what they saw filled their hearts with shock and awe. Jason Samson, an early Wave King who trained the Saint techniques of the Blood Sea, a powerhouse of the Godslayer humankind empire, was dead. His body was embedded in the walls of the cage, with a large hole where his heart should be, and there was not a single drop of blood left in his body.
What a monster!
One of the middle-aged men could not help but shout when he saw that. Cain had not only killed Jason, but also devoured the blood of this one. Both men looked at each other and nodded. Although Bloodless One did not say anything, they knew some things were better forgotten. Once they finish cleaning this place, they will forget everything that happened. Cain and Bloodless One separated after finishing with Jason. The young man was in a room that belonged to one of the strongest powerhouses of the Purest Path that perished during the Blood Sea's civil war. A red fog covered the entire room, born out of a combination of wave and blood vitality extracted from the Blood Sea, making it a perfect place for cultivation. Thanks to the sun seed inside his soul dimension, the wounds he endured during his battle against Jason were gone, and he was free to cultivate. They were less than 2 weeks before the main event of the century ascendance of the Blood Moon started, and he wanted to be in his peak condition before that happened. Unfortunately, Slaughter, the natural holy weapon that worked as a catalyst for this sonic blade fusion cultivation technique, had shattered during the Blood Sea Civil War. Luckily, he had already taken care of that, Kane smiled since there was someone who wanted to enter his room. He sent the signal through his AI chip module, and the teleportation matrix began to glow the next second. A figure appeared in the room, and Kane was surprised to see that it was Shura. Although gathering Slaughter's pot was an important task, there was no reason why someone in Shura's position would handle it. The young woman noticed Kane's surprise, but did not say anything and just walked toward him before presenting a small black chest.
All the pieces of your natural holy weapon are in here. I ask the best wave crafters in the Blood Sea, but none can restore something of such a high level. Thank you for that.
Kane nodded and opened the chest. A sigh emerged when he saw the state of Slaughter. He worked very hard and overcame all sorts of trials to obtain the weapon, but now it was no longer usable in a fight. After a moment, he focused on the pieces, and they went back into his heart. Even in their state, they could still assist his cultivation. Kane then stared at Shura, and the duo exchanged glances in silence for a few minutes before the woman finally opened her mouth.
Did you figure out that all blood champions are of the opposite sex than the Blood Maiden?
Kane's eyes narrowed when he heard that question from Shura. He had thought about it before and had come to a conclusion.
The effect of the baptism of the astral blood beast will impact the souls of the Blood Maiden and the Blood Champion. This effect will enhance their bodies and energy, but something else exists. Heritage and blood are extremely important for the Blood Sea, so its most significant event must be related. If my hypothesis is correct, the astral blood best's soul force will also affect our descendants. Forcing you into a marriage of convenience would lead to severe problems in the future, but there is a way around it. The purpose of the trial of danger was to establish a connection between you and one of the Blood Champions.
Shura displayed a rueful smile upon hearing that. As she expected, Kane had already figured out everything. She softly nodded before gazing at Kane and parting her lips.
Would you not consider remaining in the Blood Sea? With your power and talent, I am sure the Blood Duke would be more than happy to offer you the position of future Blood Heir. You could rise to become the next Blood Duke.
Becoming a Titan, and not just any Titan, but one leading a substantial force alongside a beautiful wife, was the dream of any man. Yet, Kane's eyes glowed red as he looked back at Shura.
I am sorry, but I will not stay in the Blood Sea.
Shura trembled for a moment upon hearing that, but she didn't give up and continued to stare at Kane.
Then what if I follow?
Before Shura could finish her sentence, Kane interrupted her.
My path is mine, and I need to follow it alone.
Shura immediately lowered her face, making sure Kane could not see the moisture in her eyes before turning around and leaving the room. Kane saw everything with coldness and apathy, but once he was alone, he sighed, and a sad smile appeared on his face. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 306, Century Ascendance of the Blood Moon.
You a cold brat.
Apex's voice echoed inside Kane's mind, making this one sigh.
Is it due to the Ice Girl? Are you going to mourn her forever?
There was curiosity in the voice of the spirit system, and Kane did not leave him in doubt.
I will never forget Belzy, how she made me feel or what she did for me, but I am not so selfless as to close my heart forever. Then what is the problem? That girl is beautiful, brave, and more than once put her life on the line for you.
Shura seemed to have left a very good impression on Apex. Kane remained silent for a moment before finally answering.
I will not open my heart to someone if I lack the power to protect her.
After the golden humanoid inside Kane's soul dimension heard those words, a disapproving light appeared in his eyes as he shook his head.
You have grown in a lot of aspects, brat, yet you are still weak. It is not your talent, battle power, or cultivation that makes you weak, but the fact you allow the fear of the unknown to hinder your path.
Apex did not say another word after that. Kane only shook his head as he felt the disapproval of the system's spirit, but there was nothing he could do. The pain of losing someone he loved was still clear in his mind and heart. It was something that reached all the way to his soul. Until he reached a level where there was no doubt that he could protect his loved ones, Kane would close his heart, regardless of how much he wanted them in. Not wanting to waste more time in those depressing thoughts, Kane took a deep breath and used his willpower to clear his mind. Only then did he adopt a meditative position and focus on his cultivation. While the astral rebirth path of power and essence evolution path of power were similar in the wave warrior rank, both focusing on the formation of meridians to spread the wave across their bodies, everything changed once they reached the wave champion rank. While those in the essence evolution path of power focused on upgrading their evolution core and qualitative change of their essence wave, those in the astral rebirth path of power focused on the reforge of their skeletal structure and size of their energy pool. Actually, for the Godslayer humankind, the true name of the cultivation stage after Wave Warrior was skeletal reconstruction. The term Wave Champion was used as a universal classifier, since it would be too messy to call everybody by the specific name of their ranks that vary according to their path of power and race. As its name implied, skeletal reconstruction required the astral cultivator to reconstruct their entire skeletal system. The first step was gradually breaking the bones in his hands, arms, and legs before reforging them according to the instructions of his cultivation technique. It was an extremely delicate and painful process, but for someone like Cain, with willpower at the late wave king level, it was not a problem at all. There are 12 days until the main event of the century ascendance of the blood moon begins. That time should be enough to complete the reconstruction of my fingers. The first thing Cain did was to make sure his energy needs were satisfied. He took several blood orbs and mid-quality wave crystals, but that was not all. Bloodless One had already returned the Wave King Assassin's corpse to him, along with the special space ring of this one. He did not hesitate before sending the corpse into Devourer Dimension, where it would work as a source of energy and vitality. Cain would have wanted to take Jason's corpse as well, but he did not want to arouse suspicion, so he only took the blood of the Astral Wave King. All that energy and vitality was more than enough to carry on. Cain made his astral wave revolve around his body while circulating the sonic blade fusion cultivation technique. A red light appeared in Cain's eyes as he was surprised by the pain of using sonic pulses to break the bones in his hands before using his astral wave to reforge them. The process was not only making the bones stronger, more flexible, and resilient, but also changing their configuration, increasing the number of joints in them. An average human's finger had 3 joints, but those of Wave King, who had already finished skeletal reconstruction, had over 50. Each joint not only increased maneuverability and the ability of the hands to endure pressure, but also the maximum speed at which you can throw a punch or kick. Cain made sure the revolution of his astral wave and reconstruction of his skeleton was on course before taking a deep breath and adopting embryonic breathing. That state not only enhanced his cultivation speed, but now that he had reached mind over wave, it allowed his mind to split into several trains of thought. He could enhance his cultivation and, at the same time, improve the number of his blood runes and advance in blood hands. The number of runes was growing very fast, and it was just a matter of time before he reached the final level of blood hands. The 12 days went on incredibly fast. Cain felt like it was the blink of an eye before he had to leave his room in the Blood Pagoda and march to the Blood Sea. Cain could move through the air at a speed above Mach 15, so it took him less than 5 minutes to reach the place. He immediately noticed the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and some of the strongest powerhouses in the sky. Usually, there would be thousands of people watching the event, but the Blood King's threat still loomed over the Blood Sea, so the Blood Duke and Bloodless One did not want to risk those too weak to defend themselves. Cain did not head to them since his destiny was the group that contained the Blood Maiden and the 7 Blood Champions. Despite arriving lost, like in their first meeting, no one dared to even look at him in the wrong way. First, he made it in time, and second, Cain would be in charge of protecting the entire group. The rest of the Blood Champion had yet to fully heal from their battle against the Wave King, so it would be better if they did not fight. Shura stared at Cain, her eyes empty, and she simply nodded before looking away. Cain showed a small smile upon seeing that. He didn't blame the young woman for her behavior, as he was the one who had severed any connection between them. People noticed her reaction, but they refrained from intervening. They understood that meddling in the sentiments of others during such a solemn occasion wouldn't be appropriate. Once everyone was ready, the Blood Duke stepped forward.
Soon, the century ascendance of the blood moon will start. It would be at this point that scattered pieces of the soul of the astral blood beast will unleash their power, allowing its remnant spirit to materialize deep in the Blood Sea. At that juncture, all of you must appear before it so you can pay your respects and enjoy the radiation of its soul force. Only the 9 of you, who went through the 4 trials of purity and are below 20 years old, can reach the astral blood beast spirit, since everybody else would face a strong repulsion. The journey will be dangerous since the repulsion force will not affect the wave beasts, and you will have to face them until you reach the spirit. There you will be safe. There have been occasions in the past when several wave champions perished, so you must not get complacent. Although things should not be so dire this time.
The Blood Duke and the other powerhouses turned toward Kane. Even though he would have the weight of the entire battle on his shoulders, his power would make handling things seem like a simple task. Shura and the Blood Champions nodded toward the Blood Duke before waiting. As the sun went down and the moon rose, something began to unfold. The level of the Blood Sea rose at a shocking speed, and the energy of the blood surged to an unprecedented degree, illuminating the surroundings. Then, as the moon ascended into the sky, while it remained unchanged for the rest of the Gaia continent in the Blood Sea, it seemed to take on a crimson hue.
Boom!
A burst of soul force emerged from the Blood Sea, rising all the way to the heavens, and its power was so immense that even the Blood Duke and Bloodless One were shocked by its power. Kane's eyes were filled with awe as he felt that soul force. The astral blood beast's soul should have broken into hundreds of millions of pieces thousands of years ago, yet it was still capable of this might. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 307, Astral Blood Beast. The surge of soul force marked the beginning, and all the Blood Champions adopted defensive stances around Shura before turning their gazes toward Kane. He drew a deep breath, and the next moment, his ego wave pierced into the blood water, allowing him to mark every beast before nodding. In unison, they charged into the Blood Sea, diving through the crimson liquid at astonishing speed as they made their way toward the center of the soul force. Surin and the other Blood Champions immediately assumed defensive postures as they sensed the presence of hundreds of wave champion beasts converging upon them. And they were not alone. There were even some king beasts amidst their ranks.
BOOMMMMs.
However, before the wave beasts could draw too near, sonic cannons materialized and collided with them. All the wave champion beasts were obliterated, and the cannons pushed back the king beasts. Shock appeared in the eyes of Surin and the Blood Champions as they saw the might of these cannons as they shattered the beasts despite their distance of hundreds of meters. They had witnessed Kane's sonic cannon before, but it had undergone refinement. Though originally an astral rebirth technique, its mode of operation had changed. They turned their attention to Kane and observed how he merely pointed his hand to unleash the blast. He had managed to wield a long-range attack with significant potency despite being an astral rebirth cultivator. The reason was simple. The limitations were no longer a hindrance for someone with his mastery over the 4 basic wave arts. Of course, long-range attacks were still weaker than what he could unleash in close combat. However, these techniques served well for crowd control, and he could harness the ambient life wave to employ them, saving his own astral wave.
Do not squander time. It will be dangerous to confront king beasts.
The Blood Champions heeded the advice and adopted solemn expressions. They would do their best not to become a hindrance. Kane continued to unleash the sonic wave cannons, blasting the wave champion beasts away and keeping the king beasts at bay. It was a demanding but not overly difficult task, allowing the group to advance safely. In the previous ascendance of the Blood Moon, there had always been beasts that managed to approach within 100 meters of the group, inciting a close-distance battle, but today was different. No creature came anywhere near due to Kane's power, and in less than 6 hours, they reached the epicenter of the burst. Waves of sky blue energy emerged as a phantom figure began to manifest deep within the Blood Sea. Those waves keep everything but the youths away, marking the end of the fight against the wave beasts. Shura and the Blood Champions could not discern much about the phantom figure, but Kane had a different perspective. Kane's ego wave was potent enough to detect the might of the phantom, but he could not help but frown. He couldn't quite explain it, but there was something unsettling, something amiss that he couldn't quite grasp.
Is everything fine?
Surin inquired of Cain, recognizing the young man's reaction. Despite being the senior, everyone knew who was in charge. Shura and the other blood champions also turned their attention to Cain. The Blood King's scheme involving the ascendance of the Blood Moon was significant, warranting extra caution. Cain remained in silence for a few minutes before giving a slight shake of his head.
I haven't sensed anyone, but something feels off. It would be best for everyone to remain alert. I understand.
Surin nodded, signaling the rest to heighten their guard. With that, he and the others adopted meditative positions within the bubble. Cain followed suit, taking a deep breath as he relaxed his body. As the blood moon rose, the astral blood beast's soul force would become stronger, and they had to take full advantage of it. Even for someone like him, this presented a golden opportunity, as it would purify his body and blood, facilitating his ascension through blood rebirth. Cain's gaze sharpened as he finally saw it. The phantom grew strong enough to show the form of the astral blood beast. Despite its ethereal state, the overwhelming presence of the beast was palpable. It was undoubtedly not something Ether could give birth to. He was merely glimpsing a projection of the creature, but its immensity was undeniable. Its form was a fusion of might and mystery. The draconic physique commanded attention, hinting at raw power exuding from every fiber. Despite the absence of wings, a sense of dominance radiated from its being. Massive, blood-red claws extended from its colossal limbs, a testament to its formidable strength. Curved horns adorned its head, adding the aura of an overlord. A thick, heavy tail trailed behind, exuding potential for destruction, capable of leveling cities with a single strike. The most intriguing aspect was its face. On each side of its head, 3 eyes remained tightly closed, shrouding its gaze in an enigmatic veil. These closed eyes hinted at a profound perception, as if the creature could peer into realms beyond the physical. In totality, it portrayed a being of ancient power and undiscovered secrets, a symbol of dominance and mysteries that rose above the realm of mortals. As soon as it materialized, a powerful surge of soul force inundated the area. Cain's eyes honed in on the phenomenon, and he cleared his mind, allowing the soul force's radiation to wash over him. Every cell in his body responded to the radiation, which was overwhelmingly potent. Despite being of the spirit type, its power was sufficient to alter the physical realm. The pressure mounted, causing expressions of pain to contort the faces of those within the sphere. However, 2 individuals remained unaffected, Shura and Cain. Shura, as the Blood Maiden, faced something different than the man. For some reason, the astral blood beast's soul pressure felt gentler and more soothing in her presence. As for Cain, his willpower at the late middle wave king level endowed him with the most formidable spirit and mental defenses, enabling him to withstand the radiation without issue. Minutes ticked by, and the pressure increased alongside the energy coursing through the bodies of those inside. A smile unconsciously formed on Cain's face as he felt his blood resonate. He had recently reached the blue blood stage, and his power was ascending once again. If all went well, he could attain the golden blood stage after reaching the middle wave champion level. 6 hours finally passed, and the blood moon began to lose its intensity. Seeing this, the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and others breathed sighs of relief as it seemed everything was unfolding according to plan. However, just when the sense of security began to settle in, events took an entirely unexpected turn. The phantom projection of the astral blood beast, which should have gradually dissipated, abruptly halted. Its soul force, rather than dispersing across the blood sea as it should now that the ascendance of the blood moon was over, coalesced instead, causing its power to erupt. Cain, Shura, and the blood champions were stunned by this sudden surge in soul force. Before they could react, they were immobilized, and they could only see as the phantom began to change. Initially, the astral blood beast's eyes opened, revealing orbs that appeared as pools of blood, emitting a mesmerizing allure. Its chest then started to part, revealing its true form. The astral blood beast's wings weren't separate appendages. They formed from its very blood, and that wasn't all. A halo materialized above its head, radiating such immense power that not only did the moon turn even redder, but the entire sky across the blood sea transformed as well. The Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and everyone else in the sky were astonished. They couldn't comprehend what was happening. This wasn't the first-century ascendance of the blood moon they had witnessed, yet the current events defied all reason. However, The shock became inconsequential, now their focus was on the safety of the youths trapped within. Yet, before they could even take action, it happened.
The
The raw sent shockwaves rippling through the blood sea, throwing everything into chaos and hurling everyone in the sky away. Not even the Blood Duke possessed the strength to withstand it.
ZNNN.
The sound of space shattering announced the arrival of the first collapsing pillar. The man hadn't departed after all. He clearly recognized the significance of the ascendance of the Blood Moon. While he had waited for the Blood King's appearance, a more dire situation unfolded. His eyes blazed with silver light as he peered into the blood sea. Even he felt the immense pressure emanating from the phantom creature. Despite the threat posed by the phantom, it wasn't enough to deter the first pillar from his mission. He roared, his astral wave erupting and his ego wave ascending into the heavens like a pillar capable of sundering the firmament. He went all out as though confronting the mightiest adversary of his life. Drawing his sword, the first pillar swung with all his might, tearing through shockwaves and advancing relentlessly toward the trapped youths. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 308, Rebirth. The astral blood beast didn't seem to care about the first collapsing lightning pillar as its eyes focused on the youths. First, the best focused on Shura, causing the young woman to approach before shifting its gaze toward the rest of the group. All the youths felt their bloodlines surge as the presence of the Blood Sea lineage grew stronger, except for Cain, whose bloodline was different. After a moment, the blood astral beast focused on Surin and seemed ready to make him advance, putting the youth next to Shura. Upon seeing this, a horrible feeling of wrongness assaulted Cain, as if what was about to happen was something he could not tolerate. The red light in his eyes intensified, emanating burning rage from his soul. For a brief moment, the astral blood beast appeared to sense Cain's will, but it seemed unfazed. However, at that point, the essence of the young man's soul force was unleashed. Suddenly, the eyes of the astral blood beast sharpened as they locked onto Cain. At that moment, a flash of desire seemed to flicker within its gaze, as if Cain's soul held the key to its deepest goals and ambitions. An unseen force immediately pushed back Surin, while Cain was propelled towards the astral blood beast. Just then, the first pillar managed to cover the distance and reached the beast phantom. His eyes bore an intense focus as his sword cleaved through space, creating a path toward Cain. The first pillar's attention was solely on Cain. While he would save the others if possible, he wouldn't risk his life for them. Unfortunately, this very objective was something the astral blood beast could not allow to be compromised. The beast's roar caused the entire pressure of the blood sea to converge on the first pillar. The astral blood beast had concentrated all its power in this attack. Only Shura and Cain were protected from the ensuing destruction, but the other youths were no longer important to the beast. The first pillar's eyes burned with determination as he pushed his body and cultivation far beyond the limits that Titans should be capable of. However, he couldn't overcome the power of the entire blood sea. The astral blood beast was resolute, unwilling to allow anyone to take Cain away. Ultimately, the first pillar could only grit his teeth. He swiftly sent the blood champions into his spatial ring and flashed out of the blood sea before the pressure could annihilate him. As the first pillar disappeared, the astral blood beast turned its attention to the duo, its intent growing even more forceful. Cain regained control over his body, but before he could make a single move, he found himself overwhelmed by a primal desire. He saw that Shura was similarly affected, and an irresistible urge beckoned him to move toward her, to dominate her body. The force was so overwhelming that Cain had to exert every ounce of his willpower to resist it. Stopping himself from ravaging, Shura had consumed all his self-control. The temptation was too strong, and within seconds, Cain was about to succumb to it.
You fucking beast. Do you think you can force me, Cain Laurifer, to become a rapist?
Cain's voice was hoarse, his willpower surging as he extended his index and middle fingers, sharpening them and transforming them into a small blade. If he couldn't control his mind, he was determined to ensure his body couldn't act upon such an abhorrent impulse. He refused to let anyone, especially not a creature like this, take control of him. Although Shura might have expressed her emotions for him, since when was it acceptable to act on those emotions by violating her? And using a lack of control as an excuse was a coward's answer. Even if he was with her afterward, in what world was it acceptable to start a relationship by committing such a heinous act? Cain strained every fiber of his being to maintain control. His hand was on the brink of weaving the blade when someone stopped him. His eyes widened as he saw Shura in front of him, grabbing his hand and kissing him. Cain's desire exploded as he felt her soft lips against his own, and he struggled to restrain his overpowering desires.
It's okay, let's not fight it.
Shura's soft voice reached Cain's ears, and then his lust erupted, propelling him towards her. It didn't take long for a small moan of pleasure to escape them, their pain transforming into sheer pleasure. Cain and Shura's naked bodies intertwined as they touched each other, their cries of pleasure growing louder as their passion intensified. It was the first time for both of them, and the influence of the astral blood beast in their minds made the desire and intensity of the act stronger. The first pillar, the Blood Duke, and Bloodless One could sense the events transpiring within the Blood Sea, but they couldn't comprehend it. The behavior of the astral blood beast was unprecedented, and it made no logical sense.
This change, this event, is exactly what the Blood King sought. He aimed to be part of the Union, attempting to replace Cain.
The Blood Duke's eyes gleamed with insight as he spoke. His mind worked quickly, piecing things together, yet questions lingered. Why? Why would the astral blood beast behave like this?
We must secure the area. We cannot stop it, so our only recourse is to ensure Cain and Shura's safety until the repulsion of the astral blood sea subsides.
Blood Duke and Bloodless One agreed with the first pillar's assessment. Waiting and guarding the pair was their sole option. As Cain and Shura engaged in their intimate act, the vitality of the astral blood beast coursed through them, causing their energies to surge and grow stronger. Just as they approached climax, and Cain was on the brink of releasing his seed, the beast's eyes glowed once more. The massive beast phantom looked into the sky before its eyes glowed, generating a thick fog that covered it and the two youths. After that, it split into two pieces, one that seemed to carry enormous vitality and life force, while the other was pure soul force and energy. The pot full of life and vitality fused into Shura's body, flowing into the young woman's abdomen, while the piece containing the astral blood beast's soul essence pierced into Cain's skull. If the Blood Duke, Bloodless One, and the first pillar could see the astral blood beast's phantom's actions, the beast's intention would have become much clearer to them. After humanity learned the presence of the soul, they understood that conception was much more than a mere physical process. People originated from the fusion of their parents' essences. A fragment of each parent's soul would meld, giving rise to a new soul, a unique amalgamation. This new soul would reside within the mother's womb, with a physical body forming around it for protection. These two components would develop in harmony until a new life entered the world. This process proved increasingly challenging for powerful life forms since the strength of their souls complicated the fusion. Inside Cain's soul dimension, a new presence began to materialize as a stream of soul force belonging to the astral blood beast reached the soul dimension. The beast intended to intertwine with Cain's soul force. Under normal circumstances, this fusion would rupture the original person's soul, but Cain's situation was exceptional due to his status as a reincarnator. His soul dimension was distinctive, capable of enduring this intrusion for a few minutes. An intervention occurred as the astral blood beast's soul force was about to meld with Cain's. A golden figure appeared in the dimension's sky, his eyes ice gold as he focused on the astral blood beast's soul force. Upon sighting the golden figure, the astral blood beast's terror reached its zenith, a sense of absolute dread gripping its essence.
Third realm.
It was hard to say whether it was the fear or the condensation of its soul force, but the astral blood beast's phantom managed to utter those words as it stared at the golden humanoid.
HMPH, insignificant ant. Even at your peak, you'd be nothing more than a speck of dust in my vision, yet you dare attempt to occupy this body in your current state.
The terror in the beast's eyes peaked, but before it could react, the chains covering the gargantuan gate responded. Instantly, they ensnared the beast's soul, trapping it within a perfect cage of black-white lightning and dark purple flames. Apex gazed at the lightning flame orb with a sneer.
Using Cain's soul as a bridge, attempting to fuse your essence into the new fetus for rebirth. A clever plan, but you chose the wrong host.
Apex sneered before sensing Cain's soul fast tremble.
Nearly 2 hours. Damn brat, your first time was supposed to be a sprint, not a marathon.
The golden figure laughed as he returned to his position near the gate, scrutinizing the orb and pondering what to do with it. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 309, Leaving the Blood Sea. Cain's body trembled with pleasure as he released his seed inside Shura. As this happened, his eyes slowly regained their light. With Apex having taken care of the blood astral beast, there was no longer a force taking control over them. Stay updated with Freeweb novel. Shura lowered her face as she stared at Cain. There was no regret in her heart, but she didn't know how he would react. However, the next thing she felt was a warm embrace and a hand patting her head.
Everything will be fine now.
Shura's body trembled as she closed her eyes, a beautiful smile gracing her lips. The duo stood like that for a few seconds before putting on their clothes and ascending into the sky. Cain walked with Bloodless One through a large corridor. He had remained in the Blood Sea for the last month. During that time, the young man had established a channel between the Egon family and Imperial Lightning fought with the Blood Sea. Actually, he finished that part quite quickly, but he chose to stay longer because he wanted to be with Shura for as long as possible.
You know that girl will follow you if you say the word.
Bloodless One remarked. When he heard that, Cain looked at Bloodless One, but he shook his head.
Do you want me to imitate the monster from 100 years ago?
Cain's time in the Blood Sea allowed him to learn about the events that happened 100 years ago. The treasure that an outsider took away wasn't a weapon, but the Blood Maiden. The child they were supposed to have was meant to be gifted in the blood lineage, but he was lost.
It's different. Your relationship with the Blood Sea goes beyond just us. You are a bridge with the outside world and its power, so no one would say a word. Ha, I know, but she will stay here. The Blood Sea is the best place for her training, not to mention that I won't remain in one place. I tend to move around. It wouldn't be fair for me to ask her to follow me.
Bloodless One nodded in understanding.
I see. I respect your choice. I will make sure to keep an eye on her and ensure her safety.
Cain nodded, glancing at Bloodless One.
Thanks for that. I was just about to ask you the same thing. I'll repay this favor in the future. You have my word.
Bloodless One smiled and nodded. Although Cain couldn't do much for him right now, his future was promising, and the assistance he could provide then would be tremendous. So, he made sure to accept the favor. Finally, the duo reached the end of the room, where 3 starry gems were placed.
The one in the middle is the Biomtal Herculean technique. It is one of the highest level saint techniques of the Blood Sea. You can start training this technique once you've raised your blood refinement art to the 4th level and the blood hand to the 5th level. With it, your body will become unstoppable. There are 5 levels, each involving the infusion of metal elements into your bloodstream. First, you start with materials used for a bronze artifact. At that point, your flesh and muscles will be as durable as a bronze wave artifact.
That endurance didn't impress Cain much since the improvement would be minimal. After all, his body alone was already strong, and anyone at his level could tear through bronze metal. But that was just the beginning.
The first level will be easy to master in a week or days, but it's the 2nd level that's truly impressive. Your body will become as strong as a peak silver wave artifact. And then, if you reach the 3rd level, even without the enhancement of your astral wave, your body will be as sturdy as a golden wave artifact.
Cain's eyes narrowed, and a fierce fighting intent and desire burned in his gaze. If he had that type of body, then by activating his astral wave, he could allow a wave king to attack him head-on, and he wouldn't suffer any damage at all.
The 4th level is the platinum level. If you reach that level, your body will be as durable as a platinum-grade wave artifact, even harder than your natural holy weapon.
Cain's eyes lit up as he heard that. The full energy attack of a Titan at the level of the collapsing lightning duke could barely break his natural holy weapon, and even then, its pieces remained standing. A body like that could endure a nuclear explosion point blank.
Finally, there's the adamantine evolution. If you reach that level, your body will be as strong as the armor Titans use to cover their bodies.
Cain could barely contain his amazement, as the level of the technique surpassed his imagination.
As requested, you will gain access to it for a period of 10 years as a reward for your help. After that, it must be returned. There are only 5 copies of the technique, so each one is invaluable.
Cain nodded and took the starry gem, stowing it in his space ring. He had yet to reach the peak of the blood hand and blood refinement art, but his talent in blood techniques had risen to an incredible level after the events with the blood astral beast. So, according to his calculations, it was just a matter of weeks. Cain thanked Bloodless One before leaving with him. He had the sonic blade fusion technique to improve his cultivation, and with the addition of this auxiliary technique, he could fully exploit his body's potential. In terms of battle skills, Cain's body possessed blood flow fury, and he could complement it thoroughly with the melee abilities of the sonic blade fusion and void state, erasing any weak point in his battle style. Another essential aspect of Cain's strength was the Asura form. Cain was already nearing the peak of the second gear and was in the process of figuring out the path to the third level. There were no weak points on his path, and the only way forward was to continue with his training. Once they left the Blood Pagoda, Cain bowed to Bloodless One before glancing at Shura in the distance. He smiled at the woman. They had properly conveyed their goodbyes, and it was time to depart. Cain ascended into the sky, his eyes growing sharp as his astral wave burst forth, utilizing the life wave of the air to enhance his might before shooting towards the Imperial lightning fort.
Boom!
Cain streaked across the sky like a comet, moving at Mach 15, leaving the Blood Sea behind in a few minutes. When Cain came to the Blood Sea, it took all his strength to arrive in 2 weeks, but now he could return to the Imperial lightning fort in less than 20 hours. As Cain was finally nearing the Imperial lightning fort in the distance, he suddenly stopped and looked back. His eyes turned cold as he gazed into the distance. That coldness was not due to the presence of someone, but the lack of it. There was no one watching over or chasing the youth.
It seems that they didn't take the bait.
Although he was alone, a figure emerged from his space ring just as he spoke those words. It was none other than the first collapsing pillar. As soon as he appeared, the ring burst into pieces. That was the same ring the Wave King assassin used to hide the crew of Wave champions. Space rings capable of holding life had limitations, and the stronger the life form, the harder it was to maintain the stable dimension inside. It was a miracle that it had endured holding the first pillar this long, so neither of them was surprised when it broke. Cain did not hide his departure from the Blood Sea and made sure many people saw him since he wanted to incite the Blood King to attack him. Although it was dangerous, Cain did not want to just wait for the Blood King to go after him. If there was a chance to take care of that man, he would take it.
The Blood King is dangerous and wild, but also very cunning. No one reaches such a high level in the underground without those skills. Dealing with him will be more challenging than expected.
Cain nodded, his eyes growing colder. He remembered the threat of the Blood King and knew he had to be cautious from now on, especially since the first collapsing lightning pillar would no longer be with him.
We will part ways here. The old man is waiting for you.
The first collapsing lightning pillar nodded to Cain before vanishing, this time for real. A few seconds after his departure, Luther appeared in front of Cain, nodding towards the young man with a smile.
It's good to see you, Colonel Lorifer.
End of Book 4, A War That Painted the Sky Red. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 310, Clash of Sun and Ocean. Book 5, The Awakening of the New King.
It's good to see you, Colonel Lorifer.
Cain's eyes narrowed as he heard Luther's voice. Luther's strength became more discernible to Cain now that he had reached the second reel, and he was sure that this man was stronger than the usual Wave King. He must be at the apotheosis stage. The apotheosis stage was the transition from human to the divine. In this unique level, warriors transcended the limits of the Wave King rank and ascended as mighty warriors of the divine ascendant rank. As for Titan, that was the title bestowed upon divine ascendant cultivators whose power surpassed others, capable of standing at the peak of ether. Of course, even among Titans, there were those whose power was in a whole different category, capable of unleashing a destructive might that surpassed the capabilities of the old world.
Colonel,
Cain found himself taken aback by his rank's elevation, surging 2 levels beyond major rank, reaching even the rank of colonel.
yes, you've broken a deal between the Blood Sea and Imperial Lighting Fort that has significantly aided the army. It's well deserved. Moreover, your strength surpasses the norm for your previous rank.
Luther explained. Cain's growth over the past years was astronomical. 17 years of age now, and his willpower had reached the second realm. His mentality had grown immensely these last few months, so he refrained from making a fuss about his rank and merely nodded. The duo propelled themselves towards the Titan Tower, captivating the attention of many. Soldiers gazed upward, awe painting their expressions as they beheld Cain. The tales of his participation in the Blood Sea events had swiftly disseminated across the entire sector, securing a place for him in everyone's thoughts. Cain offered a smile in response to the soldiers' gazes. Not too long ago, he had been in their shoes, gazing at figures in the sky with awe. Cain and Luther entered the Titan Tower, stepping into the collapsing Lightning Duke's chamber. The pressure of will was absent since the Sector Duke recognized it would be pointless to assess Cain's talent and willpower anymore.
You've certainly made quite an impression.
The collapsing Lightning Duke smiled as he uttered those words. Clearly, he was delighted with how things went down in the Blood Sea. Cain clasped his hand and executed a bow before the Sector Duke.
Without your aid, I wouldn't have survived. My gratitude to you.
The Sector Duke's lips curved into a faint smile, indicating his approval. He didn't expect blind loyalty from his soldiers, but rather an awareness of those who provided assistance. Cain was evidently one of those individuals who would never forget the ones that were good to him.
It was a minor contribution. I've brought you here for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's time for you to join the battle at the north of the continent.
Cain nodded, realizing that he should have participated long ago were it not for events like the Blade Mountain and Blood Sea. He approached the idea of the battlefield devoid of fear or anticipation, recognizing the dark races as adversaries of humanity rather than mere monsters. There was no way that the indoctrination of the Empire would be so potent that it could overcome the ego of a second-realm life form like Cain.
The second reason pertains to your noble arcane ceremony.
These words piqued Cain's interest. Becoming a noble was both complex and straightforward, with most people merely dreaming of such an honor. Yet, the procedure was more akin to a transaction for someone like Cain, a colonel with the battle prowess of a wave king.
There are 2 paths for this. The first merely entails the Empire officially bestowing the noble title upon you, while the other involves a crowning ceremony. I assume you'd prefer the former.
The collapsing Lightning Duke, well aware of Cain's disposition, expected him to reject grand events and the allure of fame. However, this assumption proved incorrect this time.
I would prefer the royal ceremony.
Surprise mingled with a trace of disbelief flickered across the expressions of both the collapsing Lightning Duke and Luther. After all, these ceremonies were designed for young individuals pursuing the path of nobility, not someone like Cain, whom they assumed wanted to focus on the army.
Could you elaborate?
Luther inquired, curious about Cain's rationale for such a choice. Cain's smile remained steadfast, and he promptly responded, laying his intentions bare.
I want the name Lorifer to resound throughout the Gaia continent.
Upon hearing this, the Duke and Luther exchanged glances, comprehending the concealed significance within Cain's words. He sought not only to elevate his own name, but to honor his family, particularly his father. The collapsing Lightning Duke and Luther looked at each other and smiled as they saw the intent in Cain's eyes. Nothing was more honorable than respecting your elders and trying to make them proud, even if they were no longer with you.
Very well, I will address the matter and notify you when it's time to travel to the capital. Since traveling to the Atlas continent and back would be wasteful, you can remain here and focus on your training.
Cain nodded, finding the situation perfectly suited to his needs. He had traversed different locations for an extended period, and now, A phase of prolonged cultivation and consolidation awaited, a time to integrate his insights and improvements. Within a forest thousands of meters away from the Imperial lightning fought, Zarak and Cain confronted each other, a palpable air of anticipation enveloping them. Watching over the duo from a safe distance were Oliver and Abin. Despite their advanced age relative to Cain, a solemn aura clung to their expressions as they witnessed the imminent clash of ideologies. Both were at the first realm of the ego-eternal path, but the clash happening in front of them was something at a much higher level, and they could only watch with awe. Zarak's eyes emanated a brilliant blue light as his ego wave, infused with the same hue, surged to the forefront.
An ancient image from the old world depicts a man gazing down from a cliff, observing a dog struggling in a vast ocean. Many interpret this as a choice between being the powerless man or the drowning dog, but I perceive a different truth. I am neither. I am the ocean itself.
As his proclamation reverberated, Zarak's alter ego emerged, a tumultuous river brimming with ferocity and unbridled power. Instantaneously, the surroundings responded. Trees trembled, and the once clear sky churned with turbulent currents. Even though Zarak's willpower hadn't evolved to the point where it could reshape matter, its connection with the primal energy of the world, the wave, allowed him to incite a natural upheaval without difficulty. The representation of an ocean expanded limitlessly. While Olivia and Abin maintained their distance from that mighty ocean, Cain positioned himself directly before the impending deluge. Just as the ocean's assault loomed over him, Cain's eyes ignited with red light. In a powerful eruption, a red ego wave emerged, colliding head-on with the encroaching watery fosse, holding back its advance. However, the ego wave could not face the full power of Zarak's alter ego, but Cain smiled with calm and confidence before speaking.
Countless stars dotting the sky, vestiges of ancient powers that once governed existence. As our understanding grew, we realized these stars were mere echoes of celestial bodies long extinguished. Yet among them, one remained supreme, a radiant force that gave birth to entire worlds. I am the sun.
His declaration resonated, giving birth to a scarlet seed above Cain's head. An embodiment of fervent energy, it exuded an aura of searing intensity. His refined alter ego, the sun seed, was enhanced after achieving the mind over wave state. Its dualistic nature was hidden, and everybody could only feel vitality and potency. Crimson flames burst forth from the seed, setting the red force field ablaze, clashing directly with the massive, tempestuous ocean materialized by Zarak's willpower. The spectacle they staged wasn't merely a contest, but a dynamic collision of philosophies. Their alter egos, fueled by divergent viewpoints, surged and roared, pushing the boundaries of their capabilities. Amid this intense conflict, both Zarak and Cain absorbed insights and refined their visualization techniques. The energy enveloping them offered a glimpse into the path ahead, one born from the crucible of opposing beliefs. Zarak's gaze remained penetrating as he observed the indomitable resilience of the red sun. It was a sight that deeply resonated, bearing witness to an alter ego coalescing into a constellation of formidable stars. Zarak recognized the blessing of possessing such a unique alter ego, understanding that it was an extension of one's inner perceptions, shaped subconsciously by life's experiences. While the ocean versus sun comparison seemed straightforward, it was far from simplistic. Amidst their philosophical duel, Zarak's voice pierced through the charged atmosphere.
My willpower resembles a river, adaptive and ever-changing, like the flow that shapes landscapes. Just as a river molds its surroundings, our resolve evolves through the currents of experience.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.